Hello and welcome to Oxygen Not Included, the introduction to the start of the game and how to play. First choice you have to make is survival or no sweat mode. Survival is the default, how it's expected to be played. No sweat is easier and removes a lot of the survival aspects. Survival isn't too hard at the start at least, so it's always worth going with that in my opinion. Once done that, you get to choose where you're going. Terra is your basic and a nice place to start if you're not familiar with the game. And we can go straight in. The first thing to do once you have your starting planet is to choose the first 3 dupes you're going to take with you. They will be the start of your colony, and you do get a bit of a choice over. They have interests which are useful for morale later, which we'll explain when we get to that point. Traits, which give them bonuses, are in red, penalties. And what happens if they get too stressed or if they get very, very happy. You get to choose what type of character you want at least, or you can just keep re-rolling until you get what you want. I like to make sure I always start off with a researcher. Ideally one. I'm going to re-roll this a few times to try to get what I want. There we go, perfect. +3 science and +3 machinery. Operating is useful because that's the skill used to actually create power at the start of the game when you're still doing manually rather than anything more advanced. Diver's lungs is also great, using less oxygen. Allergies is something we can handle. It's not great, but it's not too much of a problem. Our next one, I like to have a digger, because lots of digging, and again, the first one's come up, tidying is great as well as a starting point to help get rid of the stuff that's being dug out. Extra athletics is great too, and I don't really care if you can't attack, we can always handle that with other people. Our last one, I want a builder. I don't want the full interest because I want to handle morale a bit easier later on, so I think it's always better to go for 2 interests. A builder and a farmer or a cook would be great. Cooking and ranching. That's good. It's not amazing to have them split on the same person, but it means at least we'll have all those things as and when we need them. You can never guarantee what you're going to end up later on where you get a lot less choice. So, got to have 3 people. Let's get in. So we start off here, a very, very small section. And immediately I'm going to pause and have a quick look around to see what we have available. You can see this is copper, which we're going to need plenty of at the start of the game. In fact, surrounded by the stuff, lots of copper and lots of coal as well, which is nice. We'll need that not at the start, but as we go on a bit further. Water is close, more water to the side. This is a pretty good starting point. Here we have another biome. You see granite, igneous rock, and later on chlorine shows we're going into a very different area, and we need to make sure we're prepped before we go there. We have more of that kind of area up here, and on this side you can just about to see a swamp biome where we have polluted water, slime, horrible stuff, which we can use later and we'll need later, but we want to stay away from it until we're ready for it. This is actually looking like a pretty good starting location. So we start off by doing some digging just to expand the area out. First priority, we don't need to worry too much about the oxygen generator, even though it's telling us we do need an outhouse by the end of the first day or cycle. That's also going to do water, not for the outhouse itself, but so that we can have wash basins near it for keeping clean. So we're going to keep digging out a little way here because we'll want the space later. And this actually looks like a pretty good area right here. So just looking at space, I like to leave a little gap later on for wires, and then this will be our bathroom. To make sure it's big enough. Want to have 2 toilets, So no, at least a little bit bigger. That should now be fine. I can always expand it if we need to later. And we'll need a ladder to get down there. I'm actually going to aim for this water over here for our starting point because it's a bit smaller and I want to move this water. Being directly underneath the room isn't ideal and that area underneath would be more useful otherwise, but we'll move the water later. For now, as you can see, the dupes are quite happy digging out and building the ladder to get down. The advantage of using this area for our bathroom is it doesn't need digging out, so it'll be much quicker once they get down there. However, as stated, we do need to worry about this area here, and we're going to need another ladder to get down, and then once we get lower, a pump to actually start getting the water out. So, priority is 2 toilets, and we're going to want 2 wash basins which are under medicine. I leave a small gap because later on I'm going to put in an area to get rid of all the waste from the toilets in between, but we haven't researched that yet. And there they go. While they're busy doing that, everything's set up. Have a quick look at a different screen, which is this one, Priorities. This tells the dupes what to actually spend their time doing. Our researcher is going to have that as the top priority. Once we have research, and want the research to be on that as often as possible. We have a secondary priority of operating, so when we run out of power and can't do any more research, that's what Nisbet will go to by default. I don't want anybody else researching, so I put that to an X, because I don't want someone who's not good at it taking space when someone who's good at it could be doing it. Okay, no one fell through the floor there. That was a worry for a moment. Oh, it's only a hatch. That'll drown soon and give us some meat later. Okay, Rowan, of course, is our builder. Not our builder, our digger. So we're going to put an absolute priority of digging. And then of tidying. And supplying and storing if she has nothing else to do. Jean is our builder, so we'll focus primarily on that. And once we get to the point of cooking, that will have to be a priority. So we'll keep that high nice and ready. We're not going to worry about ranching quite yet because that's much later in the game before we start worrying about live food. This is almost ready, well before the end of the cycle, which is nice. You can see these want water, which they don't have yet because we've not quite finished building over here. That's almost done now. Once they finish the outhouses, they should get over here and get this finished off reasonably quickly. So the outhouses are now perfectly functional. The wash basins aren't quite. I'm actually going to set those so the dupes only use them if they're heading right past them. Later on, I'm going to put a wall down here. That's not a huge priority yet, to make sure that they can only leave the bathroom in one direction, and will always go past the basins on the way once they've left. We'll speed things up a bit because everything's set up and we're just waiting for them to finish the work now. We've got a pump, water is on its way to the basins. So now, one done, water can wait for the second. And that's all that we need to do for our first cycle sorted. Great. Since we have the time, I am going to build a wall up here. and put a door on. Why are we bothering to do that? Quite simply because there is a subsystem about rooms, where different rooms have different requirements, but will give extra morale if you have them. The most basic one is latrine, which you see needs a toilet, a wash station, and to be of a certain size, but it needs to be enclosed, which this now is. And the highlight shows you, yes, we have successfully made a latrine. We've come to the end of the cycle, so everyone's having food and going to use the bathroom. And then, with not a lot to actually do, no recreation yet, they'll simply go to bed. So they no beds yet. Find somewhere to sleep, and this bit will lie down in the bathroom door. Not a great place because we have the shine bugs. They can be useful if you want to use them that way. They're a cheap source of light. Personally, I'm going to set orders to kill them next cycle because I like to be able to control the light more than things that fly around. And you can see Rowan is not getting a good night's sleep. And just over the highlight we get, it's a interrupt sleep because of the bright light. So Rowan is going to have a rough day today, but we'll get those sorted. And now they're gone, and we don't have that problem anymore. Okay, so cycle 1 done. Cycle 2. Go to expand in this direction now for that copper, because our next priority is science. Jean has fallen asleep again because she's narcoleptic, but is now back to work. Flooring isn't essential, but it is useful. One of the things that comes with research is power, and power needs wires. Wires are dreadful for morale if the dupes see them. They're not considered to be attractive, and so we're going to try and hide our wires in the floor as far as possible. But all the equipment we're about to use is going to need all this copper that they are currently mining out. So power, our basic power, is a manual generator. Next to that we will want a battery. And you can see now we have the manual generator, but it's not connected to anything, which is what that symbol means. So we can now put our wire in, and note I can now hide that in the floor. So mostly it's invisible, which is good. We're almost done over here. And so I'm also going to want a station, which is our basic research station. I've left a gap here because I want to make room for bigger batteries that we'll have available to us later on once we've done some basic research. And again, we'll need a wire going to the research station so it can be used. Fantastic. So next priority, this is going surprisingly well. We'll set some research. I always like to start off with power regulation just to get that big battery straight away. So we start storing more power. We are going to need a bedroom for the dupes. So let's build that above our starting area. So I'm going to build a small gap between the rooms because that will be useful later on, planning for the future, when we have much more heavy duty power and we need better than our basic wiring. This will create a nice area we can seal off and hide it inside. A barracks is another one of our room options. which is what we're building towards here, which will require beds and again nothing, no machinery inside. So we're basically just looking to fill a room with beds. At the moment we only need 3 of them, 1 per dupe, but of course as the colony gets bigger, that need will increase. You see Nisbet is busy with science, that's her highest priority. Come to the end of the cycle, so time for food, time for using the toilet, and time for sleep. The game is still warning us we don't have an oxygen generator and we need a food source. Both very true. Our food isn't too bad at the moment. We have just shy of 20,000 calories available. Each dupe eats 1,000 calories a day. So we're okay, but we do need to be ready because farming takes time. We can't jump straight into it. But another night of sleep. Oxygen wise, Roche overlay shows that bright blue is perfectly breathable oxygen, so that's quite fine. Everywhere we're going is okay. So again, we don't need to worry about oxygen quite yet. What I am going to do briefly is increase the priority of these digging tasks to make sure our barracks gets finished before this little passage, which right now is largely irrelevant. It's just there for the future. Back to the research, and that's done. So we'll set some new research, which is going to be basic farming. I'm using a mod that allows you to chain research and set up several at a time. Normally you just pick one and then go to the other one, so I'm just going to set those as the next. Basic farming, so we get compost and planter boxes, and the meal preparation, which gets us a mess table so we can create somewhere for them to eat nicely, and a grill to actually cook what we create. So we have our new batteries, so I'm going to put one of those in. So the next time power is being generated, it'll start filling that as well. Once that's full, I'll swap out the small battery for another big one. We're going to need plenty of batteries around to keep the power source high until we get to automated power. The manual generators take up a lot of dupe time. Our first automated power will be coal, but that's a little way off yet. So again, we're largely just waiting for the dupes to do their thing at this point. Soon though, we'll be offered another one. When this light fills up, that shows us the printing pod is ready to create a new dupe for us should we want one. You never want to take a dupe unless you actually have a use for that dupe, because they use up oxygen, they use up food. It's not necessarily a good time to take one every time you're offered one, but we'll see what we get in a moment. Okay, we have our space now, so we're going to want our door because it's going to be a room, so it needs to be enclosed, and then we can start putting down our beds. I'm going to put down a 4th one, even though we're doing it immediately, because you don't want to get a new dupe right at the end of the day when there isn't time to build a bed for them. It makes a huge difference to how well they work each day if they've had a good night's sleep. And there we are, new printable available. We click in and we see what we're being offered. So another digger you don't particularly need. Cook, builder, decorator. Possibly useful. Yet another cook. You never have too many cooks, especially at the early game. Diver's Lungs is great. Night Owl is pretty good. The other stuff isn't amazing. To have Sandstone and Poker Shell. So I'm going to take Ada. There's another one. Your new dupes come with a free skill. So I'm going to give her Grilling. We're ready for when we start our cooking. And we can also give her a hat so we can see at a glance that she is our cook. Now she also gets Catcher. Looking at bio, we also see that she is a night owl, so she gets a bonus attributes at night time. So what we can do is set her to be on a different schedule. We call that the night shift. And we need to make, so that's bedtime. We make sure is so we're going to keep, so we're going to move her bedtime to be during the day. She has to have a couple of hours of downtime before that. And her bath time, and everything else we'll set as work time. And then we shift Ada over to there as a night owl, and now she'll work through the night rather than through the day and get those bonuses. We're also going to make sure that she is now our primary cook because she already has a cooking skill. Jean will be our backup cook. And Ada will be our backup builder. Didn't quite get our last bed made in time, sadly, but we have time because Ada's not going to go to bed for a little while yet. While we have a moment to explain a few more things. Up here we have our cycle, speed controls, how many dupes we have, the stress level. Currently Ada is 2% stressed. We can find out why, and her stress is partly because she's hungry. But she'll keep working until the schedule we've set tells her she can sleep. Now you see her stress is going down. She'll be happy soon enough. A list of who's sick, thankfully no one right now, and then our current calories available and what type of food it is. We have an achievement. Always nice to check on those. Bed and bath. We have at least one toilet and a bed for every duplicant. A nice basic start. Sadly, you will notice dupes can't share a bed. Even if they're on different schedules and sleeping at different times, they each still need their own bed. And they are hard at work. Next thing we're going to get ready for is a dining room. In the same way that we have our barracks. Now we're heading slightly further up. We're probably getting to the point where we need to start worrying a little bit about oxygen. Yeah, we're starting to get some areas of carbon dioxide rather than oxygen now, so that's something to start thinking about. Our basic oxygen generation is from a diffuser, which I'm going to put here right outside the bathroom. That needs power, can't hide every wire, but we can hide as many of them as possible. Research is done. So we now move on to plumbing. As I said earlier, we're going to want to move this big body of water. At some point it's going to be in the way. Similarly, that one is going to want to be moved as well. Ideally, I'm going to dig out this area, join these two bits of pools of water together, and create a nice reservoir on this side. So just waiting for work to be done. As I say, we want to create a nice big reservoir over here. So the starting point of that is to dig out this area a little bit more. Thankfully, we don't need to worry too much about our dupes. They can hold their breath for a very long time, certainly long enough to get over there and dig out that to start pouring the water, which will just follow gravity into this section instead. We want to go all the way down there so we can then start digging this area out a bit. Just wait for the last few power lines to be connected up here before the diffuser starts working. These are powered by algae, which is only to oxygen, but algae is something we have plenty of at this stage of the game. Later on, again, we'll need different oxygen solutions, but algae will take us a long, long way. This area is dug out, so time to make it into a dining room. And again, we put a door and front wall on, because that is what's needed to make it into an actual room. You can see now we have our latrine, our barracks, and our mess hall, all of which giving us bonus morale. Morale is important because every time you teach a dupe a skill, it costs 1 morale. So the more morale you have, the more skills you can teach them. If you teach a skill that has a heart on it, something they're interested in, they get a bonus morale for that, so you can get away with a bid at the start, but it's soon, even if you stick to just the heart skills, as you can see, it soon starts to get out of hand. Out of research. And as mentioned, want to move some water around. We're also soon going to want to look at upgrading our toileting system away from outhouses to lavatories and actual plumbing. We're ready to start farming. We have all the basics needed for that. So that's going to be our next area of research to focus on, is sanitation and the necessary systems to create both plumbing and water reclamation. Because our water will last a long time, we have plenty of it, but we are using water for our research. If we can recycle the water from the toilets, that's better for us. Ada is currently left jobless because I forgot to make this ladder long enough to get to the bottom. That's sorted now, so she'll get to that. And our setup, as we said before, she's working through the night because she's better then. Looking for a good place to actually set up our farm. I think I'm going to do it over here. One farm this size will not be enough. We can explain in more detail once we can actually start planting and showing you what the results of the farming will be. But one will be a good start, at least. We're finding a lot of food just by digging out at the moment. Muckroot, which isn't great, but we are finding it. Here's our list of all the different foods we have. We have meal lice, which is actually what we're going to be creating with our farming. Our nutrient bars, which we have plenty of in our storage. And muckroot is actually what we're finding a lot of as we dig. All of these, though, you'll note, are giving -1 morale if they're eaten. That's working against our goals of keeping everyone happy. Now, so if we're going to be ready for, once this water moves, this is going to come out of range of here, so we have to build another pump pretty quickly once the water starts to shift out. Nope. And Rowan has hypothermia. That's just from being working in the water too much. It's not a big problem. Rowan will be able to sleep that off. If we click on Rowan, we can in fact see hypothermia, which is going to end in 70 seconds or so. If we wanted to, we could create drugs to help with that, but it doesn't last long enough to be an issue. It just creates a bit of sneezing. Oh. And now we get to the point where our starting dupes are starting to get there for skill points. Nisbet, of course, is our scientist, so we're going to go for advanced research. We're starting to get to the point where we'll need advanced research to carry on. We're not quite there yet, and again, we're going to give Nisbet a hat to show that. Nope. You may notice the gap I'm tending to leave by the side of the ladders. That again is partly for wires and piping to come later, but primarily it's so that later on I can build fire poles to make it quicker to get round. Another dupe has a skill, Rowan, and I'm going to go for hard digging because again very soon start to come across materials like granite which require that skill to get through. It's good to have someone who can do it. This room has oxygen issues. Lots of carbon dioxide which they can't breathe. So I'm just going to create another oxygen diffuser down here just to speed along development of oxygen in this area as well on this side. Note, we also get here what's actually using our power while we're creating wires or in the electrical overlay. Our manual generator creates 400 watts. That's what these are storing. Research using 60. These are using 120 each, so you don't want to build any more of them than absolutely necessary. They're very expensive power-wise. Back to research. And ready for our sanitation system, we are going to want some other systems which in fact improve plumbing. Now that requires advanced research, so we're going to start that on its way. We have to do filtration first, and while we're waiting for that, we can be working on building our advanced research station. Which we'll put next to our basic one. Also going to destroy this battery now, so we can make another jumbo one next to it instead. Actually, as the game gets in, you start to get to the point where you have lots and lots of things to do at once. No, another skill available. We already have a griller now in Ada, but I want to make sure we have lots of people who can do that, so I'm going to make Jean a griller as well. Once we have the grill, I don't want it sat unused, ideally, because that's creating much better food for us than our more basic options. No, haven't even bothered to build that yet because we don't have anything to cook. Ada's still hard at work. Let's explore a bit more. Time to do the more looking around. Again, we can see a bit more of this biome now, where we have both chlorine and hydrogen. Hydrogen useful for power, chlorine useful for cleaning things later on. Lots more copper coming this way, and another swamp to our left. With gold, which again we're going to want at some point because it's more conductive than the copper. More chlorine, which we will need plenty of, so not a problem. Lots more copper below us, which is nice. More swamp going all the way around the outside, it looks like. So we'll have to dig through those swamps at some point to get to the more interesting areas. Okay, our farm is looking almost ready, so time to put down some planting boxes. There is a benefit for building a greenhouse, but it uses a farm station which we haven't researched yet, and until we can have a reliable source of fertilizer, it's not really worth the effort. So I'm not worrying too much about enclosing this area. And time to start planting. I'm going to go for mealwood seed to start. Because mealwood seed has a life cycle of 3 cycles. These are the same temperatures as we do, so that should be fine. Our temperature in here is 22.6 degrees, normal air pressure, and an oxygen atmosphere, but it can cope with polluted oxygen or carbon dioxide, so it'll grow pretty much anywhere. It needs a bit of dirt and a farm plot. It creates 600 calories of meal lice every harvest, and we might get more seeds from it. It's our starting plant. As we get further on, we'll expand that into more interesting plants, but for now at least we'll have something basic. New dupe available. Having the luck, a farmer rancher is a good option. And in fact, a farmer rancher who cannot do cooking at all. So I'm going to go for that one. Means we need a new bed, which I should already have built by now ideally, and we'll need a new table. Our new one, Liam, we're going to make into our farmer. And now we've got to put, we need our advanced research station. But we haven't actually researched that yet. Oops. So let's stop researching that. research, advanced research instead. Should really have done that earlier. Got carried away with other things. Dig out this area a bit more so we've got room to put our new pump in once the water floods out. I'm going to turn this area here into an operator's station to have things like cooking ready. Now we're also going to get a point where the outhouses are getting jammed and need emptying. So before too long, we're going to want to look at our advanced plumbing solution. Where's Ada? She'd still be hard at work somewhere. There she is. Building a ladder just so we can get to the bottom and start mining out down here properly. And now we're emptying out toilets. It's useful to have somewhere to put the waste. Time for that other jumbo battery I mentioned earlier. The micro busher and the electric grill are our basic cooking stations. Once they're built, I'll be able to show you a bit more about what they do. You know, not all the planting boxes have been planted. We only have a limited number of seeds, but each time we harvest one of our growing ones, we might get another seed. We have, I should say down here, we have here we are. Base seed harvest chance of 10%. So 1 in 10 will give us a new seed, and we'll find more as we dig around until eventually they're all planted. Now, we don't want to be eating the meal lice that come out of here, ideally. Once we can cook, we can do much better than that. So our micro musher can make mush, which is grisly. It uses dirt and water, but it does create a nice 800 calorie meal. Well, I say nice. It's an absolute last resort. Once we have our meal lice, though, you can turn 1200 calories of meal lice into 1700 calories of lice loaf. It's still not good, but it's better than just the lice itself. And we have increased the calories, so our lice will go further. Much better option. So I'm actually going to set that to as soon as we have meal lice to start creating lice loaf. Our grill is even better because we can make, well, the pickled meal allows the lice loaf to go further because it lasts longer in this form. But you'll notice 800 calories, doesn't create any extra food. It's still nasty, but it will keep longer. Not a concern from now. But once we have our lice loaves, we'll get a new option on there to fry them. Research. Now back to the improved plumbing we were hoping to do earlier, at which point we need our supercomputer to do advanced research with, and yet more power. So now we have this, I'm in fact going to tell everyone not to eat the meal lice, because we're far better off with them waiting until they can use the mushed, the actual lice loaf. We have a hatch wandering around our garden. Again, over here we can see more information about it. See what it eats. And you notice meal lice are on what it will consume. Not very much, but it is still there and still an issue. So, I'm going to kill that to stop it eating at harvest. On the plus side, that does get us meat, which we can barbecue. For 3,200 calories of meat becomes 4,000 calories of barbecue and is a really good meal. So we'll have that made and one of our cooks should get on with that. Our calorie count is starting to get quite low, but we should just about be okay. Our water has just become more of an issue. So as mentioned before, we'll need a new pump. But we knew that problem was coming. This area is primed to make a nice reservoir where we can move all of our errant water to. Meantime, we have a new achievement. We now have, it's not raw, to say we cooked something. Well done us. And now you can see the supercomputer is being used for that improved plumbing research. Having only one researcher helps make sure that these aren't being used together. It obviously speeds up research that it can be used together, but again, it's a drain on power. As you can see, the supercomputer uses up 120. The research station uses 60. That's a lot, about 400. Especially when you consider again the micromusher, 240 of it, the grill 60. Power is going to become a concern. Someone is idle. Run out of things to do. That's fine, we can always find things to do. When mining, you'll need to keep creating more and more ladders just so they can actually get up the wall to do all the mining you want. And we don't want to go too far this way or we'll end up in the swamp biome. But we have lots of room to expand in this direction. While everyone's busy, time to start setting up that plumbing. So we need to be able to get into this area for that. So expand our ladder down a little. And a bit of mine just to get into this little area. Again, plumbing is going to start using a lot of power very quickly. So we can't afford to do too much else while the plumbing is going on. But we have plenty of stored power between our two jumbo batteries. That should keep us going reasonably well. It's also a nice idea to join up your ladders as you're going along, because it makes it easier for the dupes to get to where they need to go to without actually going in the water. See, far more of our garden now has plants in, just as we found more and more mealwood through exploring and digging. Double check our oxygen supplies, and other than the farm, we're okay. Thankfully, the mealwood doesn't care that it's in carbon dioxide. Everywhere else is looking okay. Water, of course, has to flood into here. That's fine and expected. So we can put a water liquid pump in here. Like everything else, that of course needs power. Thankfully, we don't need to worry about running our wires underwater. And we put our pipe all the way along until eventually the water will pump all the way up and come out into our reservoir. And that is a great start to the game. We found a nice, good starting area. And that is where we'll leave it for now. Come back next time for the next few cycles and to see how the plumbing works out. Bye.